Hello and welcome to this brief video about how to use auto glossary in TraceCloud. The purpose of a glossary is to have a single place where you can define your commonly used terms so that all members of the project, irrespective of what kind of requirements they're creating, have the same understanding of the definition of the term. For example, you could have um, compliance terms, you could have legal terms, you could have engineering terms or marketing terms. It helps to make sure that all the users have the exact same understanding of what the term means. So when we looked into this problem, we said we could really leverage the power of TraceCloud uh, to kind of take this thing one step further. So without much further ado, here I go right into it. To define a glossary, all you need is a requirement type called glossary. In this case, I will go to the administration tool. You would go to create a new requirement type, give it a prefix, say for example, GL. All glossary terms start with GL1, GL2, whatever. This is the only requirement. Make sure your requirement type is named glossary. That's how the system knows what to do with it, right? Give it some definition. In my example, I've already created it. This is what it looks like. So when I go into my project, I have a folder called glossary. That's the top level. I've already created two subfolders here. One called compliance glossary, the other is called engineering, but I'm going to create one more here. Create a subfolder and let me call this marketing glossary. Okay. Now while that's getting created, I have it here, that folder called marketing glossary. I have an Excel file with name and definition of a bunch of terms and what they mean. Um, to make my life easier, I got a bunch of English words from the dictionary and what they mean. Importing them is using regular TraceCloud functionality. I'm going to say import my glossary terms. It's an Excel file coming from my desktop and it's called words. I think I saw that there. There it is. And I upload the file. And I say, well, the name column goes into name and the definition column goes into description. Please go ahead and create my glossary terms. So at this point, the system has gone ahead and created a bunch of glossary items, the annotate, ascertain, attend. Once that is done, anybody who is using the project doesn't need to know what terms have been glossarified. They can just use the system as they normally would. For example, they could say, we should ascertain that the Ionics system is working as expected, right? So I would go here and say create the requirement, and it automatically has figured out that, by the way, ascertain was a glossary term per definition, and if you want to know what it means, here it is, to find out with certainty. That's neat. Not only that, it said, by the way, there's another term called ionics that was defined out here. To know what that means, I would click on that, and it is saying, oh, ionics, there's a lot more collateral out here. There's a definition, there's an image, there's actually a URL for more information. Looks like Ionics is a product made by the EMC Corporation, and it takes me to that website, right? So this is where your glossary is actually put on steroids. When I created the requirement, right, I didn't even know that the term Ionics existed in the glossary. I just did that as I normally would. But the system is smart enough to figure out that, hey, there is a term for that, and wherever you use the term in the project, I'm going to map you to the glossary item. It doesn't have to be a business requirement. For example, you could create a function or release for any object, doesn't matter. I could create, say, a test case, right? The test case can be, okay, when we successfully complete this project, we should all get a turbo each, right? Let's just say that's my wish list. I can go and create a requirement. It has figured out that, by the way, there is a glossary term for one of the sentence phrases that you used. It's called Panamera Turbo, and I'm going to map you to the glossary. And when I click on this, it is smart enough to kind of take me to that page. which actually has a lot more information about what a Panamera Turbo is. And not only that, it has a link to that website uh, to get additional details. The really neat thing out here is that you no longer have, if you remember your old definition of a glossary, it's nothing more than, I would say, it's a name and a definition. But with TraceCloud, what you could do is you could define your glossary items to have not only a word and a definition, but a URL, multiple, I would say, files attached to them. You could define your custom attributes. In fact, you could have traceability of a glossary item that's going one to another one, right? So for example, to take another example, uh, let's just say I was looking at some glossary items that kind of sounded interesting. Uh, Let me go here. So as I was showing earlier, I have compliance glossary and engineering glossary, right? Say HPV testing is a glossary term. So if I were creating a functional requirement, let me create one here. Or if I could modify an existing one for that matter, let me go ahead and modify this one. So there's an existing functional requirement. I would say our HPV testing product should comply with ADA 1990, right? As I write this requirement, I'm a functional requirement writer. I know exactly what these terms mean, and I go ahead and create my requirement. However, a few days later, say a test person comes to this requirement, he's looking at this and says, it says something about HPV testing and something about ADA 1990. I have no idea what that means. That's where glossary comes in handy. It knows, by the way, there's a term called HPV testing and there is a term called ADN 1990 in the system. And ADN 1990 refers to Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. There's a link to the website. There's actually a definition. And HPV testing, again, as defined by the glossary, uh, links me to Kyogen and their product and their mapping, right? So if I were to take a step back, what have we done here? I created a requirement type called glossary. I entered the commonly used words and definitions into that system. After that, I was using the project as I normally would. That is, I create my requirements, I modify the name or the description, and the system is smart enough to find out if there are any commonly used and defined glossary terms, and it automatically maps them to to that requirement. Now, if I did not have a glossary requirement type defined in my project, this functionality doesn't even kick in. The project behaves as it was normally behaving in the past. If you have any questions on this topic, please reach out to me. I am Nathan. You can find me at nathan@tracecloud.com, or you can send a mail to support@tracecloud.com. Thank you.